Welcome to week 2 of Prairie Life Book Club. Chapter 2 is very exciting. There's lots of things going on, lots of descriptions, and several pretty funny stories. But one thing that happens in chapter 2 is Ma makes butter. She talks about her chore week, and every day has a chore that they do, and Thursdays is churning day, the day that Laura loves best of all. I have some examples of butter churns through the ages. The first one is wooden, and it has wooden slats with brass bindings, and it has a churn, a dasher on the end. And this would have been something that a farmer could make for his wife if they didn't have the ceramic one. I think they would have to be churning pretty quickly because butter would squeeze out through these edges here. But the one that Laura describes in Little House in the Big Woods is this one right here. It's a ceramic crock, and it again has a ceramic lid and a dasher, a wooden dasher. And Ma would scald the dasher so it was nice and clean and free of bacteria. And this is what they would do up and down to work on their butter. Now, this is a huge crock of butter, and they would make it once a week. And what they would do is after they got the milk from the cow, they would put the milk in shallow dishes and let it sit for a good part of the morning and let the cream rise to the top. They would skim the cream off the top of the pan and put it in their churn. When you read through chapter 2, you'll know that churning butter took a very long time. Ma would get tired and she would have Laura and Mary pitch in. So churning this much butter would take probably 3 or 4 hours. That's a long time. And they would do this every single week. So butter churning was a huge part of Americana in the 1800s and even before. And most people stuck with the original way of churning butter even into the early 1900s. Around 1920 to 30, the smaller daisy churn came about when you didn't need that much butter for your week. You could simply do it on the countertop, and it has a crank, and it cranks the paddle right here. So the daisy churn was a great invention, and that came along, and many people used it around 1930 and the 1940s. But up until then, many people still love the old-fashioned way of using their crock. Now in chapter 2, one of my favorite sayings is from Pa when he calls for Laura. "Where's my little sweet cider, half full, all drunk up?" And that's what he loved to call Laura. So chapter 2, enjoy reading that this week. There's lots of stories for boys and for girls, exciting times, and we'll talk about it at the end of the week. So join us here next up as a couple of my friends come by and we learn to make butter. This week in Prairie Life Book Club, we are going to make butter. And so I have Mary and Laura with us here today. I'm just kidding. These are my friends Peyton and Reagan, and I thought they would enjoy making butter with us. Now, butter was part of chore day, and I believe, do you remember the rhyme that they used to say about chores? So I think butter was on Thursday. So today's Thursday, and it's butter churning day. Now, what I have here with us is this is actually the same exact type of churn that Ma would have used when they were churning butter. And Laura describes it quite perfectly in the book. And in some of the newer versions, they actually have the drawing that he does of the butter churn. But we don't want that much butter today, do we? We'll be here all day. So we're gonna make a little bit of butter. And we do not have a cow. Did you bring your cow?
No.
No. Wow.
What?
A cow. Did you bring a cow?
No.
No. Okay. So we don't have a cow out back either. So we are going to use heavy whipping cream and a pint jar, mason jar. And we're using a plastic lid because that's much easier for us to clean and we can get some good shaking going on and maybe it won't leak on us. So I'm gonna have Peyton, she is gonna put in about 1/3 to 1/4 of the jar. She's gonna put in heavy whipping cream, which is about to the bottom of that S. So now let's put the lid on. Reagan, you wanna put the lid on for us?
Sure.
And put it on tight. And we are gonna start shaking. So the modern way of doing butter is we're just gonna take the jar and shake, okay? So I'm going to shake a little bit, and this is going to be quite a little bit of a process. The first thing that's going to happen, what's the first thing that happens? Do you remember? Whipping cream. It gets thick. Have you ever had whipping cream, dipped some strawberries, or had strawberry shortcake? Yes. So the first thing it'll make is whipping cream, but that's going to take a little bit. You want to do some shaking?
Sure.
Okay. You want to hold it, just hold it with both hands. There we go. That's a good shaking face too. She's done. All right. I think it's getting thick. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
And she's done. Let's see. All right. We need to call in some muscle. Do you know where we can find some muscle?
Yeah.
Where?
I don't know.
Are there boys outside chopping wood, getting ready for the fire?
Yeah.
They are? Can you call them in?
No.
All right, we're going to call in some brawn to do some shaking for us. Grayson, can you shake it for us? And when you hear the whipped cream, we're going to show the whipped cream when it gets sort of thick. You have whipped cream?
Me?
Is it whipped cream yet? Ooh, yes. So come take a look. So this is now formed whipped cream. And if we added a little bit of sugar to that, we could use it to dip strawberries in or fruit or use it for a dessert. I know.
On the sides.
But we need to keep shaking. So we're about halfway there. We need to keep shaking. All right, you got to call somebody else in now. Who else can help us? Grant. Grant. All right, Grant can help us. So when it gets thick, like whipped cream, it's going to feel like it's so thick. Let's open it up again and see what it looks like. It's going to be super thick, and it's going to feel like nothing's happening, but you got to keep going. And you're going to get to a point where you hear a thud in the jar. So let's listen for the thud. Okay, this is the perfect whipped cream consistency right here. And so if you wanted to stop and add some sugar and use this as sort of a dip for fruit, this would be the perfect thing. But we are going to keep on going because we want butter, right? We want some butter. So we're going to keep on going. We've been at it, how long? You think about 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So we have to keep going. And what we're trying to listen for
It's a thump.
a thump. That's right. We're going to listen for a thump in the jar, because right now with the whipped cream it seems like nothing's happening and nothing else is going to happen, but you start to feel it pull away. You can see it now, it's pulling away from the jar, which means we're getting close. So we're just going to keep on shaking, and it's going to start forming a ball. Okay, I need my brawn back again to come finish her up. I think the men should have made butter in Prairie days, don't you? It would have taken a lot less time. There you go. Okay, so if you hear, we have buttermilk. So it has formed a clump, and we've got buttermilk now, and we're going to pour off our buttermilk. And so this is what Ma used in her cooking to make cheese, and she also used it in her cornbread. So now we have a nice lump. We're going to give it back to Grayson and let him shake it a little bit longer. Yeah. Give a little bit more buttermilk. Okay, so I'm going to wipe the jar and let him shake it. You want to shake it just a little bit more? Sure. You want to shake it? Put some girl power in there. So now if you hear that thumping, the wad, the clump is hitting the top and hitting the bottom, and I think we have butter. You think we have butter? I think we have butter. Ooh!
Ooh, that was butter.
That was butter. So if you want to come look at our butter before I put it back in the jar. So don't dump your butter into your buttermilk like I did, but isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to add just a little bit of salt in here and have Grayson shake it up one more time to mix it. So here we have our butter. Now, if you remember, I believe it was this week in the reading how Laura describes that Ma liked everything pretty for her table, and she liked everything nice, and she would put the butter in a mold. Now, Ma had a nice butter mold that had pictures of strawberries on it, so when she pressed out the butter, there was a nice strawberry form on it. One thing that we can do these days is use a candy mold, which is perfect for making individual butter pats or making something nice for the table. So we went ahead and already made a couple with some butter, but I'm going to let the girls use the butter that we just made and put it in the mold. You can also add herbs or different seasonings. Have you ever had honey butter before?
Yes.
Yes, honey butter is yummy. So I'm going to have Peyton use a spoon and probably the back of the spoon to press it into the mold. And we made some honey butter earlier. You want to stick your finger in there and taste the honey butter? And we put honey and cinnamon right in our jar and stirred it up with a spoon. So we finished up our butter and here, use that, okay?
You can share, you know.
Siblings, I love it. So we finished up our butter and the girls put it in the mold, and this is what our mold looks like when we're done. This is our regular butter and this is our honey butter. We do have some cornbread that the girls are going to try, and this is the same recipe for Johnny cakes that we give you, but we made cornbread in it last night in our skillet. So while they're fixing their butter, we're going to talk about coloring your butter. As we said earlier, Ma loved everything to be beautiful on her table. It didn't matter that she lived out in the woods, that nobody was around. She wanted her table to be beautiful every day. And she liked color in her butter. And in the wintertime, her butter was always white, and she didn't like that. She wanted to add color. So what Mary describes is basically a tin pan that Pa drove holes in the bottom to create what I would say would be a grater that we use today. And it would be a small grate like this. So she took a carrot and she grated the carrot into really fine bits and some juice. She put it in milk and heated it. And then she would add a tablespoon to her butter as it was churning. We didn't want to risk it today by coloring our butter because I think we were doing a pretty good job. But that's how she colored her butter. And our butter turned out pretty yellow, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it turn out? Is it good? Did you give it a try?
No.
Give it a try.
Okay.
Is it salty enough? Yeah. So Reagan's gonna try out our cornbread. You're gonna give it a try, see if it tastes, and she's got honey butter on it, which is a very good choice. That's okay. So is the honey butter good? Mm-hmm. Would you suggest making honey butter? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So here we've made a little bit of butter. All we did was used our pint jar. We did about a quarter of the jar in heavy whipping cream, and we shook it, and I would say, you think it took about 10 minutes total? It's a lot of shaking. And remember, just when you think you can't shake anymore, what do they listen for?
Thump.
The thump. And when you hear the thump, keep going, and then you'll see your buttermilk. Pour that off and go a little bit more, and you'll have fresh butter. And I would suggest, should they do honey? Definitely do some honey and cinnamon and put it on your Johnny cakes.